Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fish Tank. Great to have you here. It's patch time again for Minion Masters, version 2.2. We've got some new content and some awesome new functionality that you guys are definitely going to love. Let's dive in and find out what we've got going on. Right, so reminder, we are still in the Mountain Song expansion. Each expansion is for 3 months, 3 patches, 3 season passes. This is the third and final one of the Mountain Song. So that means no free DLC for this one, but hopefully, as always, there should be one for the next expansion. So what are we going to talk about in this one? Well, this one's called Commander's Blade. It's dropping Thursday the 7th of March. We got a new season pass, as always, couple of new cards, some new awesome cosmetics, balance changes, some bug fixes, and some great improvements, and of course, new tournaments. So let's find out, first of all, about the new cards. So the first new card is High Marshal Rystar. We've seen his face in the news for some time. So we know kind of what he looks like. But what does he do? Let's find out. Okay, so this guy is a 10 mana Empyrean minion. He does 200 damage every 3 seconds. So that's 66 DPS. So higher DPS than a cleaver. But not in... It doesn't hit so hard as a cleaver. Has 600 health, so that's the same HP as a woodsman and Caleb. So tanky, but not insanely tanky. Ground minion, melee. One thing that the card doesn't mention, and it's really, really important, because without this, he would be far, far weaker, is his attack has an AoE. So I'm not exactly sure how to put it into words that makes sense. But he has an attack that's 4 long and 5 wide. Now in testing, I pushed a tower with him, and there was in the closest pocket an aimbot, and he killed the aimbot in the pocket whilst he was hitting the tower. So decent AoE for sure. Okay, so that's his base stats, but he has some additional things. So firstly, he has Legion 3. Now, Legion is a new keyword, but the functionality has already been in the game. So this is where it adds Legionnaires, in this case 3, to your deck. They're 0 cost, they're single use, they're randomly added to your deck, and they auto-play from the tower when you get to them. So that's the same as we've seen before with the new Avea, and previously with City Watch. So the functionality is the same. We've just got a new keyword, Legion, to try to make it a bit easier to understand. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is the next 10 Legionnaires you would summon are promoted to Centurions. Now in testing, a Centurion was supposed to be a Legionnaire with additional HP, but that changed. So now a Centurion is a Legionnaire, same stats, but it has this Bulwark ability where it reduces damage taken by ranged attacks by 50%. Only ranged attacks, and remember, master damage is not a ranged attack, it's a special kind of damage. So it's a Legionnaire, and you can tell which ones are the Centurions, as they have a great big shield, which kind of makes sense for their Bulwark, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, ability. Now, what will happen is when you play High Marshal Rystar, you'll get 10 little icons around your master, and they obviously relate to the next 10 Legionnaires you spawn, and as you spawn a Legionnaire, each one of those gets consumed until they're all gone. So, interesting guy. Obviously comes with some deck building restrictions, since you're going to want to build and try to get value out of these Legionnaires. 10 mana, so big upfront cost, but you get that extra Legionnaire drip coming out of your tower from the Legion 3, and you get the buffed Centurions over time as well. And as mentioned, he does have this really strong AoE attack. So it'd be interesting to see how he is, how people play him. Do they go full Empyrean Legionnaire decks? I guess we'll find out. Of course, we're not too sure how strong he's going to be, so let's err on the side of caution and give him 3 copies allowed. Classic. Right, so that's High Marshal Rystar, legendary Empyrean minion. Next up, new building, Crossbow Clubhouse. Now this is an interesting little building. So It's a building that does damage, and then when it is destroyed, it will spawn 3 crossbow dudes. So, it's a building that has potential bridge grab ability. Now, because it spawns the crossbow dudes as kind of a bonus after it dies, the offshoot of that is it doesn't have very much HP. It only has 150 health. Compare that, for example, to a ghost turret that has 350 health. Has a range of 8, which is the same as crossbow dudes. Does 20 damage, which is the same as crossbow dudes, but it attacks faster since there's 3 of them. It doesn't quite add up to 3 times faster than 1 crossbow dude, which I kind of would like. But it does 20 damage every 0.8 seconds, so 26 DPS. So it'll be good against clearing horde, since it's quickly attacking. And since it's very weak, HP-wise, you have to use it appropriately with a tank. So, interesting building, the fact that it can now spawn these extra crossbow dudes and give you some bridge control. Kind of similar to how they changed the Grasping Thorns, where it was just a damage thing, and then suddenly it becomes this damage thing that can actually spawn skeletons and have that sort of offensive, or at least bridge pushing ability. Right, so those are the 2 new Empyrean cards. As always, we've got some new cosmetics. So the cosmetics, as always, will be in the Season Pass. So remember, we've got the Season Pass and the Free Pass. The new cards are always available in both, so even if you don't go for the Ruby Season Pass, you can still get the new cards, you just don't get them quite as quickly. But the cosmetics are always in the Season Pass. And we start off with a brand new skin, Volco, the Purifying Flame. I really like this because it's so different to all of the other Volco skins. Kind of gives us a little bit of lore behind him as well. Upon pledging his undying rage to the path of the sun, Volco joined the Eastern Crusades, becoming known and feared as the Purifying Flame. All would burn before him, and the only righteous would remain. So if you look at generally a Volco skin, you think this guy must be the Voidborn Master, but he's not. He's actually Empyrean, and you can see here his Empyrean roots, and we know, for example, his Bridge Burn ability is an Empyrean ability. So a bit of lore behind him, and that's always nice to see. And I do like these skins where they take a master and they have a really different approach to it. We saw that in the last patch with Mordor, and we see another one here. So another great looking skin. And as always, we have the cosmetics that go with the expansion. We've got the new avatars for the 2 new cards. We've got the legendary Rystar one, which is animated, and the Supreme Crossbow Clubhouse. And we have a new emote, the Raw emote, which of course is Rystar. Right, so that's the new content. As always, we're going to have balance changes. We're going to look at things that get stronger, weaker, or rebalanced in multiple ways. And if you follow along with my meta video, we'll put a link up there somewhere, you'll have a really good, strong idea of what is very strong at the moment and potentially needing these balance changes. So let's find out. We start off with one that I'm a little surprised about, and this is a buff to Arcane Barrage. Not sure it needs it. It definitely didn't need the proposed buff where it gained double stacks for each play, but the damage is going up from 50 to 55. Face damage remaining the same, which I'm not a fan of that because it just seems a little bit complicated. But I don't know. Originally it was just 10%, but now it's just 10. So face damage doesn't go up, but the total damage, remember, you can have up to 10 stacks, goes up from 500 to 550. So just more value there for a spell that may or may not necessarily need it. Right, next up is a buff to something that definitely needs it, Armored Escorts. Remember, this has had a lot of changes. It's been disgusting in the past, and then it kind of got killed when they changed it. So the way it works now is you get shields, 3 shields on ground minions, or if you have 6+ mana, then it triggers this additional effect where it costs you 3 more mana, previously 4, and that's the buff, 1 less mana freeze, and you get a Crystal Sentry with shield. So that seems like a better deal, right? Pay 3 mana for a Crystal Sentry with shield. That sounds like that may see more play. And of course you can get this spell for free from King Puff Perk 2, so a little buff for King Puff there as well. Right, next up, again, a buff for a unit that definitely needs it. So Frostberry Berry, you can now spawn it on a minion that is 50% or less HP, and it will immediately trigger. Previously, it would only trigger if it was alive and the minion took the damage at that point. Whereas now you can spawn it on something that it has already passed that trigger, and it will immediately give it frozen, give it the Glenn's Brew effectively. So that's a good change. Still don't know if it's what it needs. I've mentioned this many times, but I really would like to see something happen to its charges if it dies with charges intact. But we'll see. Right, next up we have a buff to Ghost, which is kind of a weird one, but it also kind of makes sense. But basically, when it possesses the target, it will give it Spirit. Which seems a little bit counterintuitive, because when it possesses the target, it curses the target, and curse does 3% max HP damage. So, assuming it's taken into account the extra HP for calculating the curse damage, then it doesn't matter how much HP a unit has, it will always die in the same amount of time. So this doesn't change that, but what it will do is it makes that unit a little tankier for other damage whilst it's alive. I don't know if this is going to change Ghost into a card we see much more often, but it will definitely help it in some situations. In other situations, it will make no difference at all. Right, next up we have a buff to Net Blaster. I've said it before, I do get concerned with something with such a strong crowd control effect. You've got to be careful you don't buff it too much, because it will get out of control. Seems probably okay at the moment. It is frustrating. It's a similar sort of thing to the Snake Druid, where it's kind of annoying to play into unless you've got something to clear it with. But it's probably a needed buff. We'll see a little bit more of it. Next up we have a buff to Nirvir, and this is to the Nirvir Slumbers part of the Nirvir package. Remember, when you start, you have the Slumbers in your card, and that gets replaced by Nirvir themselves when you get to a Cursed Ascension, and then they alternate between them. So the damage is going up with the Slumbers from 100 to 120. It does 2 lots of this to 2 targets. It does 2 lots of this, split between 2 targets. What? I've made that way more confusing. It does this damage to 2 targets. Right, there we go. And if it kills them, then it speeds up your Ascension. 100 to 120 doesn't really mean that you can kill anything more than you could before if it's full HP, but things that are damaged, you now have a better chance to kill them. Right, Resonating Blast Crystal buff. We saw this changed in the last patch. We had the Resonating Construct added. So these changes will affect the Construct as well. So not the first one. The first one is the damage that the Resonating Blast Crystal spell does. That's just the damage it does all the time. And that's going up from 100 to 120. And then also the blast damage from the crystal is going up from 100 to 120. And that's where the Resonating Construct will also get a little bit of buff as well. Again, as with the Slumbers, the 100 to 120 doesn't really break any break points. But the double damage... if you've got the double explosion, you'll now be able to kill something like the ATG drone that you couldn't before. So could definitely get some better value out of this on occasions. Snap Freeze, small damage increase from 25 to 35. One of the big issues with Snap Freeze is the fact it doesn't do face damage. So if you're running it, then you don't have that face damage potential. But that's just... I guess part of the way and the balance of the spell. So 25 to 35 means you can now kill Swarmers, Blood Imps, Cowardly Imps, and Slitherbounds, whereas previously you couldn't. So a little bit more value there. Next up we have a buff to Spirits. So remember, Spirit gives you a unit 40% of its max HP between a minimum and a maximum. Minimum before was 75, that's going up to 100. Reminder, maximum is 350. So basically this is a buff to spirits on smaller units. Anything under 250 HP that's receiving a spirit will feel this buff. So very small units like, and I would like to try this. The Mordor sniper setup could really benefit from this. Right, next up we have a buff to the Storm Tamer. One of the newest cards, of course, added in 2.0. So, Cyclone attack does damage. I didn't really understand this. Well, I did understand it, but I understood it incorrectly when I first read it. So, what this means is Storm Tamer will attack a target. Currently, if the target is not cycloned, it will cyclone it. If it is cycloned, it will damage it. And that led to the kind of the awkward situation where it would take 2 attacks to kill something like a scrap, because the first attack, the cyclone attack, didn't do any damage. So this change is to add damage to that cyclone attack. So the first attack will do damage, and if the unit survives, cyclone it. So that's definitely a buff for it in some situations. Well, in all situations, it's going to do more damage, but definitely against smaller units. It's not going to sit there throwing a scrat up, killing it, moving on to the next one, for example. So healthy change there. Right, next up we have the rebalance. You can argue some of these might just be straight up buffs or nerfs, not just rebalances, but I like to have rebalances where possible. So the first one, this is definitely a rebalance. Lost Legionnaires. We know, again from my meta videos, these cards have been everywhere. Previously you got 2 Legionnaires with shield for 3 mana if you had the Empyrean Army buff, which they were very, very difficult to answer efficiently on bridges. And of course people wildcarded them. We lost the copies allowed in the last patch. Now they got changed completely, so you only get 1 Legionnaire, so you can't take both bridges with them. The Empyrean Army effect has been removed, so you always get a shield. And then as we saw with Rystar, the new Legion keyword, this also has Legion 1. So you get one Legionnaire, and then it copies a free Legionnaire into your deck. So you still get 2 Legionnaires eventually, but of course you can't rely on it to take both bridges like you could before. So big change to the use case of the Lost Legionnaires. I imagine we'll see their play rate change a lot, but we'll see. Maybe they will fulfill a different place in the deck. We'll see. But people always like to have these cards that can take both bridges. And that was where the Lost Legionnaires were just super, super strong, right? You got a tanky guy with a shield on each bridge for 3 mana, which was almost impossible to efficiently respond to. Right, next up we have a rebalance to the Rabid Prowler. So the sacrifice count is going down from 2 to 1. So you only need to sacrifice 1 Slitherbound to trigger it, but it only gets Rage instead of Berserker Rage. So it's easier to trigger, but less terrifying. I don't mind this because the Berserker Rage Prowler was... I mean, it was pretty easy to trigger, and it was absolutely disgusting, right? The amount of damage it did, especially when it jumped, was just insane. It made it so difficult to deal with. More difficult than it really should have been, I think. So I think this is a healthy change overall. And then we have another change. The Slithering Summons. Not a card we see too often. Will we? Maybe. So the sacrifice is going up from 2 to 3. So it's more expensive to trigger. Remember, the sacrifice is sacrificing your Slitherbound, and the idea is you use the cool Slitherbound or Slitherbind, whatever they're calling it now. This seems to be interchangeable, to get the free slithers, and then you sacrifice them. Previously this would give you a Living Statue Prowler or Soul Stealer, and it would have Spirit. Now it gets Rage as well. So be interesting to see if we see more of that. There's certain decks that definitely use that, and of course it is a spell, so some spell-based decks will like to see that change. Right, now we move on to the nerfs. Now, there's been a lot of discussion on the Discord about the shrooms, and really when they added the Growth Burst shrooms to the Bounce Reflingers, they caused a big balance nightmare, because They moved them from the flingers, which were kind of terrible, but you only played because of the shrooms, and they moved them to a decent unit that now get the shrooms as well, and they have myriad, so you get 2 shrooms a cycle. So that really made it super, super easy to get these shrooms. I would like to see, Nicholas suggested maybe only the main copy has the growth burst shroom, not the myriad copy. Something like that to just reduce the availability of these shrooms. But anyway, so the nerf, everything I mentioned there is irrelevant for the nerf. The nerf is just their attack cooldown. So they're becoming a worse unit. But of course the big benefit is the shrooms. So they're kind of moving back to be the flinger. So like, what was the whole purpose? I don't know. Anyway. Next up. Caber Tosser. This guy's been everywhere. The proposed nerf in the PTR was going up to 7 mana. That didn't go through, but attack cooldown is going up, so DPS is going down, and we'll see that with all the woodsmen. And his caber doesn't get rage, so his revelry is just the same as a regular woodsman now. He doesn't get the rage on the caber, and the rage caber was kind of disgusting because it did 225 instead of the 150 damage, and it was super easy to trigger. And I think that's the problem with the revelry buffs and the growth burst shroom buffs, is their power compared to how easy they are to trigger is just wildly off, right? A powerful buff shouldn't be super, super easy to trigger like just playing something next to something. And again, a Nicholas suggestion regarding revelry is, he suggested, why not, instead of when you revelry units on top of each other and they both get buffed, why not just restrict that to only one of them? So the unit maybe that you play onto it gets the buff because it's now got a friend, or the unit that was there originally. That could be a way to maybe reduce the revelry, because it's super easy just playing units next to each other and they both get rage, which is kind of disgusting. Right. Anyway, another stout heart nerf, Fergus. We know Fergus is everywhere. Now Fergus's damage is going down from 50 to 40. So quite a big damage reduction. And remember, he does that every half a second. So his DPS is going down from 100 to 80, and his total damage per spin is going down from 500 to 400. So should be considerably less efficient. There's only a few things he can no longer kill. So for example, he can no longer kill Zip or Vuk in one attack, assuming he's not getting stunned or something between that. But overall, his efficiency will be going down. Next up, we see a nerf to Morgul's Mark, which is a spell that's very, very strong and also everywhere, especially in solos. The duration is going up from 3 seconds to 4 seconds, so that means the time that the swarmers spawn are now spread out over a longer period. So you get a swarmer, every 0.6 seconds instead of 0.8 seconds, so they will overwhelm units less efficiently than they currently do. And another very strong card, a nerf to the Sapphire Pebble. Again, a card that's, if you've been following in the solo leaderboard, kind of everywhere, and maybe even the 2v2 as well. It's very difficult to go wrong with a 1 mana card. You know, it kills anything, you've got the value. It holds the bridge, like puts pressure on a bridge for 3 seconds, you've got value. You take a hit from a cleaver instead of on one of your units, you've got value. And it's just super, super easy to get that value. But anyway, the damage is going down from 100 to 90. And that means it can no longer one-hit some things like a Dragon Whelp, a Ghost, which we may see more of, and the Razor Squadron. So there's definitely some situations where it won't trade like it currently does. And as I said, it's very easy to trade with it. Right. Shield Guard of Light. Again, a unit that's kind of everywhere. Attack cooldown going up, so that means DPS going down. DPS down from 40 to 36. I do wish that the Brother of the Burning Fist would get something so that you could play it instead of this. But it feels like the Shield Guard is always better than the Brother of the Burning Fist at the moment. But that's just one of my personal favourite cards. Right, next up we have a nerf to the Snake Druid. Again, we see this in the meta a lot because the meta's been very heavy-based melee units. Now, the speed is going up from 4 to 5, and the reason that's a nerf is because that means it quickly, or more quickly, gets to the other side of the arena and can get killed. Whereas, you know, ideally something like this, you want it slow and loitering to stop your opponent from pushing into it. Kind of how, like Zip Zappinator, it's slow attack, it's slow movement, slow reload. That can be a real strength because you're waiting for it to get to you so you can deal with it efficiently, but all that time you're not able to put the pressure on the bridge. Right, Woodsman also gets the attack cooldown like we saw on the Caber. The Caber is basically a Woodsman with some wood, or some extra wood. Attack cooldown going up, DPS going down. This, of course, will also affect the Groggy Woodsman and the Adventuring Party and whatever and wherever you see a Woodsman. Right, so those are the balance changes. As always, let me know in the comments, what do you think about these changes? Were they needed? Have other things that didn't need it to be balanced get missed? But that's not all. Next up, we have fixes and improvements. And the devs did show me a list of all the things they're working on behind the scenes. And let me tell you, they are busy there. There's a lot of things. There was a lot of stuff they've been working on that's kind of for the future or kind of behind the scenes that doesn't necessarily directly impact player experience. But what I did is I grabbed that list and I took out the things that I thought you might be interested in. So, players can change their username. We know a lot of people have this user 123456 because of a bug, or they skipped the 2.0 setting their username. So that has now been fixed. If you go into your profile, there's a rename button. I don't know if there's any cooldowns or anything on that. Check it out, but that's there now. A deck search has been added. So if you look at your deck screen, you'll see there's a little text box above that, and you can now search for your decks. And from my testing, you can search for the deck name, you can search for the master, you can search for minions in the deck or cards in the deck. So hopefully that should help you, especially us that have played the game for a long time. We've got many decks. That should help you be able to find your decks more quickly and efficiently. And I know that's something that a lot of people have been asking for. There's definitely some stuff with regards to decks and the deck, maybe the deck build, the deck screen, or the deck management could have its own screen, but this is definitely a huge step forward. Fix mana bar visuals. If you've played recently, you'll know that your mana tends to disappear. It seems like it takes away twice the mana. Only visually, you can still play the cards, but that's now been fixed. I tested it out briefly on the pre-release version of the game, and that appears to be working correctly. Cards in hand replaced faster. Haven't noticed this from my testing, but that would always be nice, because I know there are certain situations where you want to cycle really quickly. You're cycling a card, then you've got Morelia's spell, but you want to get your skeletons out. There's lots of stuff going on, and you don't want to be delayed by the cards updating. So that's definitely a step forward. Now, on the deck building screen, there's now an everything. So this is when you're looking at your cards. So previously there was cards I have or cards I don't have and can craft, whereas now there's an everything which has both of them, and that's how the old version of the game was, and how some people definitely wanted the new version of the game. So that has been added, so that's a nice change. And I know they are also working on additional views, so you can have bigger cards on the screen, which is something we had in the old version, and definitely something people will like, especially maybe if you're on console, you're sitting away from your TV across the room. The little cards are kind of difficult to look at. Added queue time to the lobby screen. Added master damage to cards with reduced master damage. So this was always missing. So for example, you got a fireball, does 200 damage, only 100 damage to face. It will now show that. If the card doesn't show master damage, that means it just does full damage to the master. Leaderboards loading faster. Offer types in shop and season pass now show what their type is. So it will tell you if it's a card, an avatar, an emote, skin, or whatever. Because there's definitely been confusions in the past where people thought they were buying a card and it was just an avatar, and so on and so forth. So that should be better now. Spirit Infusion no longer highlights buildings and masters. Removed or adjusted bad bot decks. So there was, for example, a deck that had Gax in it, which if you get a teammate as a bot, which you can do on rare occasions, them playing a Gax is not ideal. So that's been adjusted. Added feedback when signing up to the newsletter. Fix the main scene and the ladder scene being out of sync. So that's your points. Sometimes those two wouldn't agree. Fix some missing materials on certain arenas. Adjusted. Arenas adjusted to be closer to 1.0 colors and lighting. Fix broken avatars on leaderboard. Fix broken guild banners on leaderboard. Tronvir's runestones are now master buildings, which means you cannot call to arms them. Fixed Coke's hypnotizing Stormy break in the game. That was also hypnotized as well. Spirit Mancer and Blast Mancer no longer need to get the killing blow to trigger the effect. Never saw this. This was never something that had any sort of official proof of it happening, or nobody was able to replicate it, but people complained about it, I think. So there was some code added just to make sure that could never happen, even though it didn't happen. Fixed lag on master perks. Fixed streamer puffs emoting being broken. Missing audio for Valstalker. I think that's when she does her crystalline sweep has been fixed. Fixed Armored Escort not highlighting appropriate target cards. Fixed Tranquil She-Howl's attack animation desyncing. I'm sure there's some others as well. Scotty seems to be one that gets that a lot. Fixed Ratbo's Daka indicator being barely visible. Fixed Gambler's Ball not highlighting when sacrifice is available. Fixed Chain Lightning's lag spike. Fixed Tantrum Throws and Slitherbound spawn visuals being offset. Fixed some skin issues. Fixed Caber-Tosser description. Fixed Seal of Korgoth missing tooltip. And I've seen a number of people complaining about their achievements not working. Fixed Resource achievement not processing. So see what happens when the new update comes out. Right, so lots of fixes and improvements. Really liking the deck search. That's a really nice feature. Really great to hear that people can change their name as well. Something simple, but that's going to definitely improve the experience for a lot of people. Lots of cool stuff there. Right, next up, we have upcoming tournaments. So reminder, Knights Duel 33, that's a 1v1 $400 prize tournament on Saturday the 23rd of March. And the Fishbowl Brawl 1v1 and 2v2 play over time events. Now, please, join the Fishbowl Brawl events as well as the Knights Duel. We haven't been able to play them recently because just the interest has been so low and people haven't been really wanting to play, and it doesn't really make sense to do a tournament with not that many people in. So it'd be really awesome if you guys could join up. Links will be in the description. Remember, they're play over time events, so they're super easy to get involved in and play your matches when it's convenient for you and your opponent. There's loads of rubies to be won, and it's just an all-out good time. So yeah, check out the links in the description, and it would be great to have you there. It'd be great to get these events all back up and running. Okay, we got through it, guys. There was a lot to cover, so I appreciate you sticking with me. Just a reminder, Commander's Blade 2.2, Thursday the 7th of March, new season pass, new cards, High Marshal Rystar, Crossbow Club House. We got the new skin, Volco the Purifying Flame, bunch of balance changes, bug fixtures and improvements, and of course new tournaments. Lots of stuff to look forward to. I am excited. We did it. Right, as always, if you're enjoying the content here in the Fish Tank, make sure you hit that subscribe button so we keep you fully up to date on everything Minion Masters related. If you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, that really helps. And of course, get involved in the comments. Let's have a discussion. How are you feeling about Minions at the moment? We know there's been problems. Every patch makes it better. What are you most excited about with regards to the stuff that's changing in this patch? What are you disappointed that's not changing and you would like to be prioritized? So always have that discussion. Always look forward to talking to you there. Anyway, that's enough from me. My name's Bad as a Fish, and I'll see you on the battleground.